Welcome to the Agility in Real Life podcast, Take 5 in Real Life. Now your hosts, Mike Stuedemann, Jeff Lee, and Pat Campbell.
Welcome back to Take 5 IRL, Take 5 in Real Life. I'm Mike Stuedemann, one of the partners at Agility IRL and a co-host of this episode of our podcast. I'm joined once again by one of my business partners, Pat Campbell. Pat, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Mike. How are you today?
I'm doing well, excited about continuing this series on flow metrics. My friend, we've been discussing flow metrics over our last couple episodes. Today, I thought we'd take on cycle time, another of these flow metrics. So, Pat, I'll give you an easy one to start. What's cycle time?
Thanks, Mike. It's not certainly not cycling time, which we're running out of here in Minnesota, but it's really, when you look at your workflow, which hopefully you do from time to time, it's the measure from one point of the workflow to another point, the total elapsed time. Typically, it's going to be start to finish that you're looking at, but it could be other subsections as well. And it includes everything that happens during that period, including any holds, waits, or blocks. So it's the total elapsed time.
Yeah, I think teams love things like story points. They love things like velocity. Cycle time is probably the most honest agile metric there is because it really shows from a customer perspective, from the time I say, "Hey, I want something," to the time I actually get it. That's going to be your cycle time, and there's really no way around that. Now, some of our listeners might debate, well, Mike and Pat, are you talking about lead time? Are you talking about cycle time? In my experience, I don't really care how you define it. I just care that you define it consistently.
That's the key is looking at your process and saying what constitutes start and what constitutes finish. Typically in Scrum, we're trying to get to a point where we get feedback. And so a lot of times the cycle time is going to be when we commit to delivering it in a sprint and then deliver something in a review, deliver something ready for review that we can get feedback on. And well, speed and controversies, one of the other arguments about it is, well, should it include business days or calendar days? Your end user or your client or customer or consumer is it could care less about business days. They want to know how many
Absolutely.
calendar days before I get this thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think, teams should care about cycle time, obviously because of the customer focus. I think the other big reason and maybe we're kind of burying the lead here, is the whole predictability aspect. If you have a good
Mhm.
handle on your cycle time, you should be able to, using that real empirical data, forecast when certain features are going to be delivered.
It is it is actually cool when you think about it, and maybe that's a geek kind of cool. But if you look at the cycle times over history of your work, taking things like story points out of it and velocity out of it, just looking at hard fast data around work items, small, medium, and large, and how long they take, you can use things like Monte Carlo, which we may get into in another session, to predict with 95% confidence when something will get delivered. And you're going to have a window of time, but it's pretty cool that this actually enables you to do it with some fair amount of accuracy.
Yeah, I think, certainly measuring it, and the major tools out there should enable you doing that. Yeah, the Jiras of the world, the ADOs of the
Mhm.
world. I think, Pat, as you're talking about a confidence interval, you got to look at distribution, right? You got to look at
Mhm.
the plot, and that should in visualizing that distribution, you should be able to have some really good conversations as a team. Why are some product backlog items taking longer than others?
Mhm.
Why did this product backlog item sit for 30 days before it was worked on in the next step of the process? So there's just a whole bunch of goodness, for lack of a better term here, that comes from looking at cycle time. So as we wrap up our time for this episode, Pat, any final words of wisdom on cycle time for our listeners?
Well, if you're going to try to transform your approach, particularly from an agile point of view, from what you've been doing, start with baselining your cycle time as it is, and then after you've been through part of your transformation, you'll be able to see, am I having an impact? We at Agility IRL take pride in focusing on outcomes, not just output. And so we have ways to enable that. But even if we're not working with you, definitely use this to baseline and measure the impact of your transformation.
Yeah, so great advice. Start today, get a baseline on your cycle time, and see what conversations and improvements that drives within your team and your organization. Pat, as always, I appreciate the time. Appreciate our listeners tuning into this episode. Continue to tune into future episodes as Pat and I continue talking about flow metrics. Thanks again, Pat. Have a great day.
Mike, it's been fun. We'll see you again.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Take 5 IRL podcast. If you like it, please go ahead and share it with someone, as well as like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Also, leave us a comment or a suggestion for a future episode. Again, thanks for listening, and we look forward to you joining us next time on the Take 5 IRL podcast.